And for whatever reason, the property already had a well and septic on it, already drilled and in place as we speak, would they be, fall under the headings of impact fee?
So is it a vacant land or is it a land with a house?
No, it's, I guess it'd be vacant, but it has
Okay.
a well and septic. Could have had a structure there at one time that burned, or a trailer that got pulled away, but
Just making sure we're understanding the
there's well and
question.
septic already on the property.
Okay,
For the record, Brian Mance, and I mean, the impact fee would be imposed only if they connect to the public water and sewer system.
This
So-
wouldn't,
right, because most of the county, you gotta remember, we don't have water and sewer available in a lot of areas of the
yes,
county.
this is a well and septic on private property in a
So-
rural area.
Right, so they're not, if they're not connected to the water and sewer system, or they're, you know, once they connect to if they were to choose to connect to the water and sewer system, or if that service became available, then an impact fee would apply. But if they are
I
just on
understand.
well or septic, that would not be applicable.
Okay.
Impact
Okay.
fees.
I got more, but just go ahead.
No, it's okay, it was a good question. Go
That was the
ahead.
first one that hit me, and I'm thinking on the others. Hang on.
Okay, so I have a question, not necessarily for our consultant, but on page 91, it talks about, under definitions, county coordinator. As we sit today, Mr. Suggs, who is considered the county coordinator? Says it means the county coordinator appointed by the county administrator and the county and the coordinator's designees for the purpose of administering this chapter. So is that Brian? Is that, I mean, as we sit today, who is that person?
Madam Chair, I don't have an answer for you on that one as of right now.
Okay,
Let me take a look at it.
okay, thank you. And then, so I would draw the attention to the board of, under section 24.9 on, which is page 97 of your packet, under exemptions, and I want to read them a little bit into the record because I think this plays a very important role as we move forward. The following conditions are exempt from payment of the impact fee required under this chapter. Alterations or expansion of an existing residential building where no additional impact units are created and where the use is not changed. So my question for the other consultant would be, could you give us some examples of what is considered for this exemption of additional impact units?
So if you are tiering the schedule by size, then what we are looking is area under air. And if you are adding in addition, and that makes that home go to the next level, then they get charged for the difference. If it's some sort of alteration, I don't know, they are adding a patio, they are doing something minor, usually those are exempt. If it's not under air, that's exempt anyway. And then if it's not tiered, it's just per home, so anything they add is not going to be charged.
Okay, so you just brought up a very good point that I think this board has to take into consideration, which was we discussed having a tiered system versus a non-tiered system. So what you're saying is if we had a tiered system and we had, let's say the threshold is 1,500 square feet, and a current owner owns a house and it's 1,600 square feet and they want to build on another 1,000 square feet, you're saying they would have to pay the difference for that. Versus as we sit today, if we do not accept the tiered system, they would not have to pay for that additional 1,000 square foot.
Correct.
Okay, that's huge for me because we obviously don't want to hurt our existing taxpayers. I believe that's the intent of this board, is to try to not hurt our current citizens. We want to, so you're saying a tiered system would make them, they would have to pay
The difference,
the difference.
correct.
And that's across, I mean, that's the way it works across, that's a standardized,
That's for all the fees except for utilities. They are not tiered. And that's how it works, meaning, yes, because when we tier it, we look at average person's, the average impact of each size category. So smaller homes tend to have fewer people and therefore tend to have lesser impact. And these are all averages. So again, if they switch a tier, then they would pay the differential only, not the whole fee, but just the differential.
By the square foot.
By
Okay.
square footage, yeah. No, it's per unit within each tier. So like we have 3 tiers, which is most common, 0 to 1,500, 15 to about 2,500, 2,500 and greater. Within those tiers is per dwelling unit, because it's really hard to claim that every 1 square foot adds more impact in terms of housing. It's not like commercial, people just add space for, like if it's a family of 4 can be in a smaller home, bigger home, and so on. So we try to keep it per dwelling unit, but there is, on average, there are usually fewer people in smaller homes, and so that kind of differentiates the impact.
So for clarity, if we go with the non-tiered system, we will not have any additional impact fees for those people that would like to add additional square footage to their home.
Correct.
Okay.
So if we go with a tiered system to lessen the impact on smaller homes, those people who did not pay the impact fee initially and were current residents, and they did decide to increase their home, they would be affected.
They will be affected just by the difference.
The incremental
difference,
amount from
correct.
tier to tier, should they transition from one tier to the other tier.
Correct.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Harvey, you have your lights on?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So let's get this straight. Somebody has 1,000 square foot home, and I haven't seen the tier rates that we asked about. I haven't seen that.
It was in that last presentation.
But let's just say that you have 1,000 square foot home, and now you want to build you want to build another 1,000 on top of that. You're not going to pay a single impact under the non-tiered system.
Correct.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Suggs, Administrator Suggs.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. My apologies for not having an answer earlier to your question, but in researching the information that's provided to us, the fees themselves will be coming through, my apologies,
Thank you.
Development Services. And so they'll be calculated there, but they also will be a function of the Finance Department, because we'll have to book those fees coming in and then make sure that those fees are expended correctly within the districts and all for which those fees came in. So those will fall under our Finance Department, which unfortunately will fall under Ms. Young.
Okay, so you're saying in this ordinance, the way it's written, the county coordinator, as it sits today, would be the deputy administrator?
Yes, ma'am, it would be, because the departments for which the fees will be generated, the Building and Planning Zoning Department, as well as the Finance, falls under Ms. Young's Deputy County Administrator's position at this time.
Okay, so when people come in to do an application, do you already get involved in what their cost would be?
In some respects, yes. I mean, truly, in this respect, the county coordinator is not needed for a self-explanatory permit, right? If you're coming in to build a single-family residence, there's no decision matrix needed by the county coordinator in this particular arena. The Citizen Serve, the online permitting software that will recognize the permit type just like it does today and assess a fee, will apply that. It's when we get into alternative methodology calculations or how that fee comes in or out that the county coordinator would have to make some sort of determination. Now, although, as Mr. Suggs appointed today, as I just read, that designee can change. So I can be replaced easily. That said, it would be a collaborative effort, although I may be the ultimate person signing off on the declaration. It would be a collaboration between Mr. Baker, Mr. Wadeson, and all of those divisions that need to weigh in on the applicable building type and application of the fee schedule.
Okay, thank you. The reason I was asking specifically that question is because I do believe we have a tiered system for our permit fees as they are, and so that's why I was wondering.
Well,
But
your
I
permit
understand what your
fees,
point
yeah,
is.
your permit fees apply to that ICC table, right? And so we have that uploaded into Citizen Serve, and there's a matrix formula that runs it. And so when I go apply for a permit, there's not a person on the back end that has to run that number. The system auto-generates it. And for 90%, I'm going to hope, of the applications that come through, assuming the passage of impact fees, the same thing will happen. It will be the select few where you might have a mixed land use, or you might have an applicant who maybe is in multiple arenas, where your county coordinator would have to have some manual review and application of the fee schedule.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. For the IT department, I'm getting a text that people online cannot hear us. So going back to the exemptions, Commissioner Palacio, I know your light's on, let me just get through this. So exemptions, we talked about that. Number 2 would be the construction of buildings or structures that are accessory to a residential building where no additional impact units are created. So same thing. Okay, so if somebody's building an accessory dwelling unit, as long as it's not a dwelling unit, like a mother-in-law suite, if they're just building a garage,
Back
a
or
barn,
something, right,
okay,
a storage area.
none of those would be subject to impact fees. Okay. And then it goes on to say the replacement of a residential land use where no additional impact fees are created. So what it would be considered the replacement of a residential land use?
So if somebody tears down their home and builds it either the same square footage, or if it's tiered within the same tier.
If we had the tiered system?
If you have the tier system, if it's in the same tier, if you don't have the tier system, any size of single-family home, they tore down their home and rebuild it, they won't pay a
Okay,
fee.
so if somebody buys a lot and it has 1,000 square foot home on it, and this house isn't good enough for them, and they tear it down, and they want to go in and build a 3,000 square foot home, there's not an impact.
If it's not tiered,
If
there's
it's not a tiered system.
Correct.
All right, I wanted to make sure that's clear. Temporary construction of a shed or trailer used to assist construction and maintained only during the term of active building permits for related construction activities. I don't understand why we have to have, I don't understand that one.
That one is like, if you have a construction site, they may have prototype units that are there just for 6 months.
Oh, I got
When people
you.
are coming and trying to
Like in a big
decide.
development,
Yeah.
okay. Public schools and charter schools are also exempt according to Florida statutes, and any other use that exempted by law. And then it goes on to say that the county will ensure sufficient funding is available to maintain levels of service, provided the impact fee studies to the extent an impact generating development activity is exempt, except as expressly authorized in the Impact Fee Act provisions for affordable housing. So if this board wants to exempt affordable housing, we have to discuss that now and in this ordinance, or is it automatic because it's in the Florida statute?
It's not automatic, it's just an option in the statute. It says for qualified affordable housing, you can discount them, you can waive the fee, and you don't have to backfill with another revenue source, but it's entirely optional. And it doesn't have to be today decided. You can also add that later if you wanted to.
So
Okay,
Madam-
so that's something that could be added later as an exemption.
Yes,
Yes.
Madam Chair, Clay County has a program, so if you wanted to develop your own program, we would pass a separate ordinance that provided for the waiver of those impact fees related to affordable housing.
I do have a level of interest in that. I think if we're moving forward, I would like to see that, but I see that it would be a separate issue. So thank you for that. That's my questions for now. Commissioner Palacio, you're recognized.
Forgive me, I'm going to jump around here several places. My main concern is for our current residents and those that have been here. The people moving in here, that's not way up on my priority list, I'll be right honest with you. I'm more concerned about the people who've been here all these years and protecting their interest.
Which is why I wanted to read those exemptions so that we would have those.
Yes. To go back to your comment about the people adding on 1,000 square feet to an existing structure. Now, is this pertain only to the people that are tied into the county, city, and water systems, or is this anywhere throughout the county?
So the utility fee, water, wastewater, is wherever you are providing the service. They are limited to only those people who are able to get the service. All other fees are based on their service areas, which is unincorporated county for law enforcement and countywide for the other ones.
I think that's my question, is people that are in extremely rural, where there is no county water sewer, would they come under fire under this additional 1,000 square feet of home that they might want to add on to?
No, they would not pay water, wastewater fee. They would pay the other fees, like transportation.
Okay,
Commissioner,
so there is a tiered system, is that?
No, only if we
Let me
vote on it.
just cut to the chase on your question. The answer is yes. Yes, they would still pay those other impact fees.
If you pass the tier.
If they pass the tier for that, depending on if you're a tiered system or not. If it's vacant land and they're in the unincorporated part of the county somewhere else, that's not near water and sewer, they still pay the other fees.
They pay the other fees.
Yes.
Not the whole bulk of the whole deal.
Yes, only what they are causing an impact upon the county for. Yes,
That
sir.
makes sense. Thank you. I'm good, madam.
Okay, thank you.
Ma'am.
Commissioner, I believe Commissioner Alexander was next.
Thank you. Exemptions 24-9, number
Give us
2.
a page number there, please.
That is
97.
on 97. Madam Chair asked a question regarding the additional structures. You said they would not pay a fee, but every time we talk about fees that are paid, it goes under conditioned space, and you did not make that exclusion there. So if they're building an additional structure and it is conditioned space that could be used potentially for occupancy, how will we?
So if it's
No.
similar to accessory dwelling units, is that what you're thinking, mother-in-law?
Mhm.
Yeah. So so there is not a separate category for ADUs as far as the data.
Could you turn her microphone up? I'm sorry, or I know she's
Can you hear
trying.
me?
Thank you.
There
Yes,
you
ma'am.
go.
Okay, sorry.
They give me a hard time too. They just don't hear very well.
Yeah, that's right. It's on us.
So the different jurisdictions treat accessory dwelling units differently. Some treat them as a expansion of the single-family residential, so it will be treated as an additional square foot that just happen to be not like detached from the main home if it's a separate unit. Some jurisdictions treat them as a multifamily unit, like the second unit on the same parcel. So you have some flexibility, but they are charged either through as an expansion of the main residential unit, and if there's a tiered system, or as a multifamily second unit, which is a lower rate.
Multifamily second.
Multifamily is a lower rate.
Thank you. Okay, it's just a lower rate. Gotcha. Yep, thank you.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Thanks, Zach.
Thank you.
So I do want to bring to light, our accessory dwelling unit ordinance currently prohibits the landowner from leasing or selling that unit separate of the primary home. So if it was a tiered system, we would be looking at the square footage to see if we're getting into another threshold. But if we adopt the single fee for the single-family residence, we would not assign an impact fee on that accessory dwelling unit because it is complementary to the primary home.
All right. Does everybody understand that? Okay. Commissioner Harvey, you recognized?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Going back to the county coordinator and why we were talking about that, what if you don't agree with her? What if you don't agree with that person and you go, I think she's lost her marbles and I mean, I'm being charged too much. What's the ability, I mean, because I don't want our employees to be stuck out there with their neck out and get in trouble here. So what's the remedy if I don't agree with that?
If it is a alternative study, usually the applicant has the right to bring their complaint to the board if they don't agree with the staff's decision.
So kind of like the property appraiser on the value adjustment board. If they don't agree, they have remedy to come before the value adjustment board and talk about it. So you're saying if they don't agree, they can come before the Board of County Commissioners and dispute their findings.
Yes,
Correct.
And it's
Commissioner, if
actually
you look
on-
in 24-17 on page 109,
I was
is
about to
the
say
appeal
that.
process, where they would have 30 days from the determination by the county coordinator to make that appeal.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is a process in the ordinance as proposed.
My other question is, if there's water and sewer running in front of your property, and the county currently does not make you hook up, we don't have an ordinance forcing you to do that, right?
It would follow the state statute, if I'm not mistaken, yes.
Well, but even though the state statute, we still don't force people to do that. My understanding.
It has been the position of the previous boards to not force people to hook up to those systems, but when you're discussing the impact fee, this is a good time to have that conversation, but as of
Yeah,
now,
I
there's no
think
policy.
I think it's hanging out there, and it's been hanging out there for years, and it's time for us to have that. But my problem is, let's just say you have a piece of property there, and you go, look, I've got a well and septic that's been here a long time. I don't want to hook up to your water and sewer. Now we're in a weird situation where we're going to force them to do it or not do it, right? So what do you tell the landowner? Do you say, well, impact fees don't apply to you? Or do we come back and say state statute requires you to do this? We've never really enforced it that way. I mean, you can see where this is going to come from.
Well, you know, as has been discussed in previous meetings, I mean, the board can, you know, dedicate other funding sources to make the impact fee whole for those types of customers. For existing customers, for example, you know, instead of you know, having some sort of alternative funding source to help pay for their water and sewer fees, if you want. Usually, I mean, it's looked upon favorably, but I mean, if they connect to the water and sewer system, they are, or if they're, I mean, they are creating an impact on the system.
So when is the day that we say, you know, no more septic and no more well water? If we've got a pipe running in front of your house, you're going to have to hook up to that.
I think that comes back to this board. I mean, that's a
yeah,
board decision that we have to make a separate policy.
Policy decision.
The problem I'm having is this: we have to make the impact fee whole. So we got to take money to buy down that, right? So it's not really fair to the taxpayer to go, well, we're going to take out a general fund to pay down this because that person doesn't want to hook up because they got water and sewer and the board hasn't made a determination to make them do that yet. It's not really fair to the taxpayers of Putnam County.
Yeah, I don't think, right now, we don't force them to do that.
We don't, no.
And we don't have to offset that in any way.
We
But-
do.
But Commissioner, as I understand it today, you're talking about a new home, right?
I'm sorry?
Are you
A
talking about
construction of a new home.
Sure, let's talk.
When that new home is constructed, if they are in the service area for the water, wastewater, the impact fee will be assessed to that individual. And they will have the opportunity to hook up. DOH currently is the authority on whether or not they could have an irrigation well or a substitution outside of that, but it will not exclude them from paying the impact fee for water and wastewater if they're in the East Palatka Regional Systems distribution lines.
All right, that helps a little bit. So have we also set up zones for these impact fees? Because we talked about that early on, and I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, we did set up for transportation and parks. It was in the presentation, it's probably in your package. The other fees don't need for example, law enforcement, they travel with their cars everywhere to the whole service area. Fire helps each other, so on. So the other fees don't need to have separate benefit districts. They can be their entire service area. But for transportation and parks, we developed a two-district approach.
Because we had talked about maybe 3 zones, but I don't think we've ever settled on what those zones would look like.
So, if I may, in the last presentation we had, there were two areas, east and west, and the river was what separated them. And that was for transportation, and what was the other one?
And parks.
And parks.
It's on
because-
page 95, I believe, of your agenda, the district impact fee district maps.
Yes, it is, thank you. Thank you. So transportation facility districts that consist of 2 public facility districts, 95. And so we have a west district and an east district, both served by the, and it has the mapping there.
That's right, okay.
So that's for transportation and parks. And like the consultant said, everything else, water facilities district that consists of a single district, and it goes on to say wastewater would be a single district, and of course, fire and rescue and sheriff's office.
Yeah, I saw that. I just had talked to administration about maybe doing a west one in a central zone, city of Palatka, and then south like that. But, Putnam County is so diverse, but I can probably live with the river cutting it off and going like that. But we can always amend those maps as we go.
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Everything can
I'm
be
fine
changed.
with it the way it is for now, and like you said, if we wanted to look at it later, but I think for our purposes for now, we gotta get this thing going one way or the other. Commissioner, I'm sorry,
I'm done.
you're
Yes,
done?
ma'am.
Commissioner Pelletier, you're recognized.
My next question is going to go to the commercial aspect of a business wanting to move here. Mr. Commando and I had this conversation, and I just probably need a refresher course more than anything. We have XYZ company says, I'm moving to Putnam, and we're going to put in a business and employ 200 people. How do we incentivize, how do we make it appealing to them that they want to come here and not get hit with a big old impact fee?
So if you have targeted industries, there are jurisdictions that buy down the fees for select targeted industries that the community finds important to attract. So you can always have a separate fund. You can set an annual amount, say, up to $200,000 a year, up to whatever it is. We will fund this from economic development dollars. I think Chamber has mentioned they have a program, and they can buy down the impact fee. It's kind of like a tax rebates, same idea.
I think that's the way Mr. Commando explained it. Is that kind of pretty well? It's been a while, and I just want to get a refresher course.
It is, that was the same type program we talked about.
Right, okay. And it would be based on if they said, hey, we're going to employ 200 or we're going to employ 20 people?
Those are the board's decisions, but yes, you do need to set up some criteria, so it's not random. But it's like, if they generate this much job, they are paying X amount, whatever
Right,
the criteria is that you really like to attract.
To me, it would be the economic impact that they're bringing to the county. Are they bringing 200 $40 an hour jobs or 20 $15 hour jobs, that type thing?
Right, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And Commissioner, what we discussed at the last meeting, and I really felt like it was a separate issue, is that if the chamber wants to come up with some incentive program and come back to the county and say, hey, we want to set aside so many dollars out of this fund or whatever. But what we all have to keep in mind is when we offset something, we have to cover it with something else.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to backfill it, which I think was the term you used, then it has to be sales tax, or it has to be general fund, or it has to be, and then it has to be consistent. What you talked about was you got to make sure it's equitable for everybody. It can't be, oh, we're going to pick this Joe Schmo and not this Joe Smith.
Mm-hmm.
So there has to be a process in place to do that. And so I just didn't want to, I definitely see the point of that, but I don't want to not move forward because of that. I think that we can resolve that in a separate conversation, a separate document, or whatever it is the chamber comes up with in cooperation with the board, and see, and maybe there's different funds that they can make available for us.
I think that's coming to Putnam County, and I'm just trying to be ahead of that curve.
Yeah, I know, I definitely agree. I just don't want us to tie it to the impact fees, is where I was at.
I understand that.
It's not working anymore.
All right, so were you saying you're next?
No.
All right. All right, Commissioner Newbold, you're recognized. Thank you for your comments.
I think we talked in the past about when these impact fees would be collected, and general consensus at the time of the permit. Would there be any prohibition from us doing residential at time of permit and commercial at CO?
I don't know that this ever been challenged or tested, but to the extent possible, if you treat all new development equal, you are in much safer ground.
I gotcha. Yeah, I was just thinking of a big project coming to town that's going to have a significant impact to employment and things of that nature, and a very large project. I could see an entity like that, it being very advantageous to have that cash flow, to have that set aside until they occupy the space, but just trying to think of little incentives that may help in that process. But I get where you're coming from. Thank you.
And I guess my comment would be, if we're comparing apples to apples, what would they be paying in another county? What would they be paying to put that same business in another county? So that's something that we have an incentive, if we create an incentive program, that's one thing. But their impact, we're the only county in the Northeast Florida doesn't have an impact fee, and that includes for residential and businesses.
No, I'm not saying forego the impact fee, but have them pay it at the time that they occupy the space as
Right.
opposed to when the permit was pulled.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Alexander, you're recognized.
I got it. Thank you, Madam Chair. To Commissioner Newbold's point, I understand what you're saying, trying to get everything on the ground up and running, where you've got some ROI and some dollars coming in the door so you can complete the project. You know, so it's as functional as it can be before you start paying that out. But again, like she was saying, you know, you open yourself up to individual preferential treatment, so it's kind of scary. But Commissioner Post here, when you were talking about the what they were doing with the chamber and creating an incentive regarding the set-asides, I talked to Rich about it, and I've talked to Laura, and Rich, as you know, works in a number of counties. So, you know, when we were in the contracting industry, what we like to do is piggyback off of existing examples that worked well. So I would suggest we go through and pirate somebody else's in another county, so we don't have to spend a whole lot of time doing it. If it works well, let's go with it. If it has faults, we fix them before we implement it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, good comments. Commissioner Harvey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Palatka, at the last meeting, just so happened we had a Putnam County Development Authority meeting just a few days prior to that, and I serve on that. And we did talk about doing some type of grants. Now, I can't speak for the Development Authority, and we haven't put that in place yet, or we might not. But there could be a possibility to partner that money, maybe even chamber money, maybe some of our money for incentive programs. But again, we have to buy down. We have to buy them out of the impact fees. And as Commissioner Wilkinson said, what are they paying in other counties? So it might be cheaper to be here anyway, and the incentive might not be that drastic.
Right,
So,
that's a good point.
okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, are there any other questions for the consultant before we take public comment? All right, thank you. If you'll just hang around for a few more minutes. At this time, do we have anybody who wants to speak from the public? There's our friend, Mr. Michael Woodward. Thank you for coming up.
Well, thank you for having me. You just happen to be dealing with one of my favorite topics.
Well, that's great.
Topic that's been of interest to me for some 30 or 40 years now. For the record, Michael Woodward, 517 South Francis Street, Interlochen. I'd like to first address a little bit of the flat fee versus tiered issue, some pros and cons there. And then I want to say a little bit about the discussion I've heard about the relationship between impact fees and incentive programs, if you'll indulge me that far. I was a little disappointed when I looked at the agenda packet that the only impact fee schedule I saw was the same old one we've been seeing with the flat fees in it. I was hoping that by this point we would have an alternate table 24-1 with a tiered system in it so that we could put them side by side and have a real choice before us. But I'm glad to hear that there's still some interest in a tiered system. But what you all had to say, especially what Commissioner Wilkinson had to say, really resonated with me, that we don't want a situation where we are penalizing people who want to improve their homes by adding on to them a bit. And I get that. And we probably wouldn't have a problem with people building a 1,000 square foot home one year and adding 3,000 square foot more the next year. I don't really think we'll have a problem with people gaming the system that way. But one thing to keep in mind is when you have a flat fee system, you're making the people who build smaller homes pay more in impact fees. Somebody's paying more. The people at the low end who have scraped together money for the starter home, they're going to pay a larger fee than they would under a tiered system, because in a tiered system, the people who come in with the money to build the larger home that could accommodate more people will be paying a higher than the average fee, a higher fee than what you would get under a flat fee system. But the people at the lower end who are building the 1,000, 1,500 square foot starter homes, they're going to be paying a lesser fee. So if you don't go with the tiered system and you just go with the flat fee, you're making it easier for some people, but you're making it harder for others. I'd like to suggest a possibility of something that might provide the best of both here for us. And I'm hoping your consultant and perhaps your county attorney will be able to weigh in on this, because I certainly haven't had time to research it or think it through. This issue just came up today, but it might be possible in your impact fee ordinance to have a tiered impact fee schedule, but specifically exempt from that schedule additions to existing homes, so that the new homes that were being built from scratch would still come under the tiered system. But anything that was already there would be grandfathered to have, in effect, no further impact fees. So that might be a way of accomplishing both goals, if it's feasible to do that legally and practically. And as I said, I'll let other people weigh in on that. In regard to incentive programs, there's a good argument to be made that any incentive programs not only should have a funding source that is separate from impact fees, but they should have nothing to do with impact fees at all. Because, and I'm not arguing for or against an incentive program at this point, but I'm just saying if you're going to have one, what is it you're trying to incentivize? Are you trying to incentivize land development, or are you trying to incentivize economic development and job creation? Some business might want to start up, whether to relocate here or better yet, some of our own people creating a business right here, and not build a new building to do it, but use a building that already exists. Mm-hmm. They might remodel it, repurpose it, even tear it down and build a new one on the same site. But in all of those cases, they would not be subject to an impact fee in the first place. So an incentive program that was targeted to impact fee buying down or refunding, or however you want to put it, wouldn't even be able to help those people. So if we really want to have a fair and neutral and open to all incentive system, it really should not be tied to impact fees, because not every good thing that happens economically in this county is going to be based on taking a vacant lot and building something there that's never been there before.
Very good comments. Are there any questions for Mr. Woodward?
Well, on the same effect, you could make that incentive program impact fee correlated to folks who are rebuilding. I mean, if you're going to craft that thing, you could craft it to do both, I would imagine, if you wanted to dedicate that much money to it. I don't know.
Well, if an incentive based on whatever criteria for this hypothetical program, creation of jobs at whatever level, if the incentive was for X dollars, that doesn't have to be X dollars to pay down an impact fee. There just has to be X dollars.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And so there doesn't have to be a relation with an impact fee at all. And it just keeps it cleaner. And another reason to avoid any sort of incentive program that reduced how much money was coming in from impact fees and this one is a little more, maybe a little more speculative, but I would imagine that most of the folks we would like to see come and invest here, whether it's investing in homes or businesses, are looking for a place that has good services and where they can count on having the necessary infrastructure for those good services going forward. So the more sophisticated investors are probably going to be looking at, is there a dedicated fund to pay for public service infrastructure, and is that fund adequately funded? One more thing I just wanted to say about if you did decide to go with a tiered impact fee system, I'm glad that we heard from your deputy county administrator there that basically there's not going to be a whole lot of added administrative burden to that. And the administrative burden between having a 3-tiered system like they have in Clay County or a 5-tiered schedule like they have in Volusia County or a 7-tier schedule like they have in St. Johns County is negligible. You know, it's not harder to do a 7-tiered system than a 3-tiered system. That said, we probably don't need a tier right now for 6,000 square foot houses because I don't think too many people are going to be building those right away.
Commissioner Alexander, you're recognized.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention regarding the reinvestment and giving an exemption to folks that are willing to come in and reinvest in existing buildings. I didn't know that was an option. I think that would be great for eliminating some of the blight and some of the former businesses we had, and giving, you know, we'd work with the CRA and just complement what they're doing. I've got one building in particular. I don't know if it would qualify since it's within the city limits, but there's quite a few opportunities, and that I think that you could kill 2 birds with 1 stone if we could implement something similar to that. Is that something we would have to do now, or is that something we can address later? Later. Thank you, Rich. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
You're welcome.
All right, Commissioner Harvey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So let me ask the legal question. If we did a tier system, can we, number one, add the exemptions for additions or improvements
To existing homes.
to existing homes?
So I'd want to hear from our consultant, just because they're the ones that would have to defend it. I mean, my gut reaction to that is you're running very close into a gray area where you're not being consistent and fair. But
It's very gray. I think that's going to create an incentive even for new homes to start small, a year later add,
Yeah.
so that they pay the lowest fee and then not pay the rest of it. Again, it's based on the impact, and we are attaching impact to the size when we do that tiers. So even if it's an existing home and somebody buys it and it adds to it, and they have more people or whatever it is, more impact, then we are not charging one group, but we are charging the other groups because they started at that size. So I think it's going to have potentially unintended consequences.
Everything we do have unintended consequences. So.
That's true too, yes.
But, okay, I do see your point there, I do, but I also remember how hard it was to get started in life.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when you're 23 and married and you got children, it's quite a big nut to crack right there. That's, unless family helps out, it's not going to be there. But I was just kind of wondering if, with my question about exemptions for additions and improvements, what if you had 1,000 square feet, and could you impose, you could add another 500 square feet without tripping the threshold?
Yes.
But if you go to another 1,000 square feet and make it a 2,000 square foot, then you're going to come under the new,
Yes.
you know, and that's what I'm asking.
I mean, those are averages, and we have to have some breaks. But when we look at how the basically persons per housing units slope upwards, you know, they are not linear. It's not like every square footage adds a person. So it sort of goes sharper and then sort of flattens out right around 1,500 square foot and flattens out even more right around 2,500 square feet. That's why we picked those breaks. Like the gentleman mentioned, there are other schedules that have more breaks. As you need it, you can always adjust that schedule. So basically, on average, a small home, like somebody, you know, brand new, they just got out of school, that got their first jobs, a couple, they will pay less because likely that they're going to build a smaller home. And then as they have families, they're going to add maybe to that house.
Well, I walked in today thinking that the tiered system would be the best system, but truly it might not be the best system if they can build on, if we have the flat rate system, they can build on, they can add, they can do what they want. So that might be a better system for, even though it's going to cost them more up front, or a little bit more, let's just say that. It might be better in the long run for them.
If they're not building a brand new home, if they're buying something that's existing, there's no impact fee.
Right, there's no impact.
There's no impact fee. I think that's something that we all need to keep in mind. If they're going down to North Knights, well, I won't use North Ninth Street because that's in the city. If they're going out to Bostwick and they bought 5 acres of land that already has a house on it, that's already, it's there. There's not an impact to that.
And I agree that it's going to clean up blight. I do
agree with that.
You know, so, yeah, I'm probably not interested in tiered right now, only because I think it just doesn't cut the mustard for me. So thank you.
Commissioner Alexander, you're recognized.
Yep. You know, the idea of the tiered system, I understand what the attempt is and there, but ultimately my goal is to protect the people that have been here in Putnam County. And it sounds to me if we implement that tiered system, the people that we are trying to protect, if they decide to increase the size of their home, that they're going to pay for it. And that's not what I want. What I would like to see, another question that I have to incentivize people to stay and homestead here, can we implement something that you have a time frame that if you're within the home 5 years or 10 years, you can increase the size of that home as your needs increase. But to try and limit those people that, as Mr. Wood said, gaming the system. You have to own the home for 5 years before you can do this, so you avoid that impact fee. I mean, I don't want to make it too difficult to interpret, but my goal is to protect our existing residents and those that are coming in and adding an additional burden to my county. They need to help pay for that.
Again, the impact fee is tied to the structure, not who lives, and it's a one-time payment for the life of that structure. So when that person sells that house, even an existing home, it's already
But the tiered system, if they
that
expand
amount.
it.
Right, because of the pricing, they recoup that amount, so it's not like.
But on the tiered system, if they expand their home, they'll have to pay.
Yeah, they have to pay a differential, which is a lot less than the full fee. So I don't think you can, I mean, it's not, because of that one home will be occupied by multiple families throughout its life. They're going to have different impacts to sort of limit for one group that still has impact versus somebody. I mean, there's no way to track that, you know, where are you coming from? Are you going to not sell to somebody from outside?
No,
Right.
what I'm saying is the person that's been in a home for 5 years or 10 years, I don't think that they should have to pay an impact fee if they've been here and they've maintained their residence here. I think they've paid their dues. You know, if we go with the tiered system, they're going to be penalized for investing in their house.
They're going to pay a small difference, but again, chances are too, if it's a couple and then 5-10 years they have children, they have more trips, more impact, or they are selling to somebody after 5-10 years, that has a different impact. So again, I would recommend keeping it simple and not making differentiations or, but again, I'm not an attorney, so.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Newbold, you're recognized.
So if you did a tiered system with very few tiers, just say 2 tiers, you're less likely to trip the next threshold if you're upsizing your house just a little bit. Something to think about.
Yeah.
And we could come back and if we start with a flat fee, can you come back and change a tiered system later?
Yes, you can.
I
And
thought we
just
already
wanna
answered that
give you a
question. Thank
sense,
you.
like right now, the tier system that we developed for you all, if you go from 1,500 to the second category, difference is maybe about 700. It's like, let me see, 77. It's going from 6,500 to 7,700. So it's like a $1,300 as opposed to 7,700. So it's not, you know, if you were to build a new home, that's 2,000 square foot. It's the total fee, excluding utilities, is about 7,700. If you already had a home, 1,500, and say you added 500 square foot, then what you are paying is about 1,300 as opposed to 77, just to have some dollar amount sense. It's not as much as the full fee, or not even half. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I'm just looking for an opportunity to protect those people that have been here from having to pay for additional utilities to pay for growth beyond what they're going to use. You know, if I've been here for 15, 20 years, if I'm going to add another 500 square foot to my house, do I want to pay $1,700 to subsidize a move for a new resident? So that's my thing. You know, I understand we need the impact fees. We have to have the impact fees, but I'm trying my best to find some way to help the folks that have been here for their entire lives and prevent any additional fees. I know if you don't add on to your house, you don't move, you don't do anything, nothing changes. It's only going to benefit you because it's going to limit the amount of additional taxes that are going to have to be levied to maintain the status quo, because everything's going up in price. So I understand that, but I also understand that if there's an opportunity to save a few dollars for my neighbors, I'd like to do it.
And I think that's why we, these exemptions under 24-9 specifically say that. Without the tiered system, those additional, expansion to an existing residential building is exempt.
Right,
And I
right,
think
and that was my question
that's why I
about the
wanted
tier.
I think that's very imperative to what our discussion.
Yep.
Did you have something, Mr. Newbold? I'm sorry, the buttons aren't quite working.
Yeah, it's okay, and I get exactly what you're talking about. I hate to penalize folks who've lived here, they're adding on their house.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we've had people come in and say, hey, I have my children, they're gonna jump in and, this initial impact fees is tough for them for the new home that they're gonna do. And if you have a simple tiered system, at least it's a little less expensive for that young resident that's gonna get their first starter home. So it's tough, it's hard one way, easier the other.
It is.
It's a tough one.
It is. And, it's just the questions that we were elected to ask and try
Sure.
and find the best path forward for our county.
Yes, sir.
If I'm not asking these questions, you're not asking these questions, we're not doing our job.
Sure.
So,
Sure. Well, thanks, because now you made Commissioner Palacier push his button.
hey, at least, how many items does he have first? He may have 5 items.
Go ahead.
I don't have
Go
but one.
ahead, Commissioner Palacier. We
I don't
gotta
have
have
but-
some light
I
on all
don't have
this.
but one. If we get into this situation or this impact fees and we find an unforeseen problem that just came out of the blue and it doesn't work for us, is all of this amendable?
Yes, very easily.
Okay, I think
you
I was
can-
being
you can-
redundant there, but I just want to be double sure
Yeah,
that we can go back and revisit it.
Yeah, you can reduce the fees, eliminate the fees with one meeting. It's immediate. It's much harder to increase the fees. Once you have a set of fees, then the state has limitations how often you can update and how much you can update.
I think I remember Mr. Commando telling me that,
Yeah.
like 2 years or some,
4 years.
4
No,
years?
no sooner than 4 years, no more than 50%, unless you can show extraordinary circumstances and 2/3 of the vote. Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? All right, just for, since this is a public hearing, I just want to make sure, is there anybody else who wants to speak in favor or against the impact fees? Come on up to the podium, state your name and address, and I know you've spoken to us before, Mr. Smiley.
Good evening, Council.
Good
My name
evening.
is Brandon Smiley. I'm an investor and builder, focusing primarily in the East Palatka area.
Okay.
And I currently have the only new construction house on the market there. And I don't think it's because it's not an area with good opportunity. I just think that the margins are kind of slim in the niche that I'm trying to focus on, which is
Okay.
affordable housing. And I'm not as worried about the wastewater and water impact fees, because the last two wells I got were 9,000 and 7,000 apiece.
Right.
So it's kind of a wash, looking at some of the fees that you're proposing. Same thing with wastewater. These new high-performance septic tanks are $24,000 for a nitrogen enriching system. I bought 4 of them this year. And so the wastewater impact fee, not a big deal. But as far as, I don't know what the other category is called, but the house itself, that's where, when you add up the well, the septic, the fixed costs for just putting a house on Grandview Drive in East Palatka is $40,000. Before I have to build a 1,400 square foot house and try to sell it at a price that we think is affordable housing. So if there was any sort of framework, me as a small builder moving into next year, getting ready to permit my next 6, I can use to maybe mitigate impact fees via providing affordable housing, that would help tremendously.
Well, Mr. Smiley, so I got a couple questions for you. So if you've saved money on the water and sewer, wouldn't that not be enough to cover what the proposed impact fees are?
Yes, but every lot's different. So I was talking about a well and septic lot. I'm
Right.
doing 2 of those this year.
Yes, sir.
The other 3 I'm doing have water but no sewer.
Right, yeah,
So
we're
each
working
one's
on
going to be
that.
a little bit different. And I'm not trying to have my cake and eat it here too. So that's why the utilities don't necessarily bother me as much, because I think the impact fees can do good things.
Right.
I'm excited to see what it does for, Putnam County in general.
Right, exactly. And I know you said you build homes in Putnam, obviously, and are you building homes in other parts of the state?
No, I've built homes in Duval, St. John's, Clay, and I kind of quit working in St. John's, Clay, and Duval to just focus on building nothing but new construction, affordable housing in Putnam.
So would you say that the price per acre in Putnam is more reasonable for you than in those other counties? Is that one of the reasons why you're
it
choosing
definitely
Putnam?
is. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, fair discussion. Commissioner Alexander, you recognized?
I think last time you were here, we talked about affordable housing. Give me your definition of affordable housing for Putnam County. What are you attempting to sell a 1,500 square foot home for, turnkey, ready to go?
So currently, before I heard from Mr. Commando about the, what was it, the median salary of 85?
So when you talk about affordable housing, you operate off of an area median income, an AMI, which are HUD standards that are out there. So traditionally, 80% of AMI is what is considered based on those different tables. For example, in Clay County, to answer, Commissioner, your question, there are builders that there's 2 builders that are building affordable housing at 1,800 square foot, 1-car garage, and they're selling it for $275.
That's kind of what I was thinking. I spoke with another constituent today who received a quote on 5 homes at 1,400 square feet at $175,000 per house.
And I would like to see as we move forward, if we move forward, that we have some exemptions for affordable housing. I do think that that's something that we're going to have to talk about at a later date. So I see an opportunity there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess my next question would be is where can I find that information in order to, because I feel like with real estate being so competitive these days,
Right.
I'm trying to time the market the best I can by permitting and clearing in the fall, trying to get the shovel ready in January to time the spring market. And
Right.
so I got to start working on those soon. But I currently own, I believe it's, I think between 12 and 14 lots in Putnam County. I think 2 are under contract. I own 12. And I'm just trying to make up a game plan for those moving into the next year, because every little detail matters these days.
Sure. Yeah.
But that's all I
Even down to the grocery store, we get it. We get it. Yes, sir. All right, thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Smiley?
But just to answer Mr. Alexander's question,
Oh, yes.
I was just kind of basing it off of, I was a first-time home buyer 2 years ago, and my mortgage was, $300,000, and it's hard to afford that. So I figured if I was keeping it anywhere underneath there, I was doing okay. Like, I would love to go as low as I can go. I'm not very greedy, but I didn't really know how to gauge it other than that.
Yeah, because I think last time you were here, you told us that you were around $300,000 for what you defined as affordable housing.
Yeah,
Putnam County, that's not affordable housing.
no worries. The first one I sold was 283, and then the second one that I just listed yesterday, I have at 299, just because what I've learned, from my first meeting here, I couldn't really implement it at the end per se, but I do have a $5,000 closing cost credit to try to facilitate, because I had one of those, and that made a big difference in getting into the houses. And I don't know of any of the programs I can use to my advantage to help buyers. I'm just doing the best with what I got.
Oh, absolutely. We appreciate you being here.
Yeah, you may want to take a look at the Home for Heroes programs. I mean, a lot of the down pay assistance is honestly, how most counties allow offset of their impact fees.
Yeah,
Thank you, council.
thank you. All right, before we come back to the board, is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Come on up. You're next. This is The Price is Right. Come on down. Listen, after 5, we start getting a little bit, sillier.
Margaritas. So the chamber board voted, they took a formal position in favor of impact fees on residential, with the exception that a vehicle be created to mitigate for commercial and industrial, which I hear all the conversation, that's wonderful. We have a proposal for a consultant to do an incentive policy, and we'll review all of that and put all that together. So that's all great, and I love all that conversation. The only thing that I heard today, so one comment and one clarification. Big fan of impact fees at certificate of occupancy versus permit, because if you charge it at permit, you're gonna tie up cash flow for that project.
So you're speaking specifically to industrial and commercial?
Commercial, yeah, because a lot of those projects are self-funded, they're not going through a bank, and so if you do it at permit, then they gotta come up with that in advance when cash flow is already tight, versus at certificate of occupancy, where now the project has come to fruition and they have a vehicle to generate revenue to pay that at that point. Or maybe they're gonna be able to refinance under a different loan once the project has been constructed. You might have a construction loan versus a loan on the actual built product, and those could be different. So the other thing that I have seen on a lot of projects is them change hands multiple times. So you'll see a lot of these projects where you have multiple entities all engaged to bring this project to fruition, and one partner gets mad, sues the other partner, and now the whole thing is collapsing, it's in court, and then now you're holding their fees because you charged them at permit. Whereas if you wait until the certificate of occupancy, it also protects the board from having to be involved in that whole thing, that whole process. So that's just something to think about. I've seen some of these projects change hands 4 times before they actually are stood up. And if you had charged the impact fees at permit, now you're sitting on that money, and now you're involved in all that litigation as all these things come and go and flow. Whereas if you wait until it's done, certificate of occupancy, now it's just one and done and that kind of thing. So that would be my only comment, just to kind of caution you on. And then the last would be, we have a lot of projects in the pipeline that we are absolutely sure impact fees will probably be detrimental to. Is there any consideration of are people going to be grandfathered in if they're currently in what does that look like in terms of implementation of the fees, and then what triggers it? So if let's say you decide to go with certificate of occupancy, does that mean that any project that comes to fruition before that certificate of occupancy would pay it down the road? Or are they, if they go into permit now, are they then protected where they don't have to pay it down the road at certificate of occupancy? So just kind of some of those timing questions. I wasn't sure about the clarification on that.
So I have a question for you. So you came from Clay County?
Yeah.
So how did they handle it in Clay County?
For which part?
The part you just discussed. As far as commercial, did they do it at certificate of occupancy, or did they do it at permitting?
No, they do it at permit.
They do it at permitting.
They have to pay it at permit?
All right.
But not originally, maybe?
As far as I know, we've had to do them with the Housing Finance Authority houses.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a hotel project that we had to go through production on that had not paid it. But anyway, it's just something to think about. It can be messy, so. Did you have any other questions?
I know, are there any other questions for Ms. Laura?
Mine's-
Commissioner Palacier, I apologize.
Mine is related between the two of them. I understand what you're saying, and that coming into play once you give them their CO. Is the legality of that, where does that stand? Could that be done, or is that a no-no?
I've never seen it done that way, so I'm not saying that it's illegal. I think it's just a way of kind of getting projects to budget their cost as to when you're going to collect those costs.
I totally see her point about if you've got two entities and they have a disagreement or whatever reason, and then they get into a legal match of splitting the property and this, that, and other, and our money's, we've got their money, and then we're all knotted up into the mix of it. I do see her point, but I just wonder about the legality of, could it be done before we give them their CO?
I think you have to pick a defined point, and then you have to fairly apply that defined point as to when you're going to collect the impact fee.
And I do want to hear from staff regarding, from either Brian or Zach or somebody, I don't care. Somebody from staff needs to weigh in.
We can let Zach and Brian and the deputy administrator chime in for sure. One of the things that we had discussed amongst ourselves in administration is it's not so much when you apply for a permit would the fees be collected, it's at the issuance of permits.
Correct.
So there's a big difference there. You know, there's a whole process involved with applying for it and getting to the point to where you're actually ready to receive permit. I would definitely caution moving beyond that with the CO, because we also have what we call temporary COs. And so we need to be mindful of that as well. I don't want to speak for our building official, but there are a lot of issues that could be tied to that as well. So I would just caution this, and I think the process that we discussed about the issuance of permit is probably one of the cleanest and fairest ways to move forward with it as far as administration is concerned. And I'm talking for myself, but I think that is one of the ways I think would be the most cleanest.
Ms. Young, I can tell you have something to say.
So just so the commission is aware, I met with Leo, the building official, as to what the best prescribed process is. And remember that in a traditional world, impact fee aside, the payment rendered to the building department is at permit issuance. So if we don't collect at that time, most of your applicants, residential or commercial, are going to mostly forget that there is a day coming where additional fees are due. And those project costs, like we all know, we're gonna get to CO, and then we're gonna have a code complaint, honestly, because the project overage, whether it be a residential or commercial project, is out of funding to pay for that final certificate of occupancy, which is gonna cause a little bit of a burdensome on, and frankly, a bad perception of the building department for a lot of your constituents. So the payment transaction time is permit issuance. Now, that's not when you apply, that's when you've worked through the building department with all of the required and necessary steps, and you're ready to hit the ground running, right? So cash flow being what it is, that is not on day one of your project that you're thinking about. That's not at DRC, that's not when we start reviewing fire plans, that's not any of that. That's when we're ready to break ground and move forward with the construction project, which is when most entities, both commercial and residential, should expect some cash flow to come out.
I agree. Commissioner Alexander, you recognized?
I'm not going to be eloquent or diplomatic about it. I don't want to be chasing nobody for my money. I'd like to get it up front, and if we have a specialized business that we want in here, we had discussed incentivizing those impact fees, and they can fall into that category. Otherwise, I think we need to collect it at the issuance of permit, because I don't like chasing people for money.
All right, very good. Commissioner Palacier.
Ms. Young, I see what you're saying, but I see a difference in commercial versus residential. Residential is a total different caliber of monies that's going to have to come forward. And if you're dealing with a commercial entity, their fee is going to be a lot larger, and they're most likely going to be in a better position to pay it. I'm just thinking about the as she said, the legalities, and that's going to happen. May not be today or tomorrow, but somebody's going to get in a match between each other, and as I say, tear the sheets, and there's going to be a standoff. And, it just, and I don't think the county wants to be wrapped up and involved in that. I'm sorry for my slang, but that's just the way it is.
Mr. Helms, you'd like to chime in?
May I ask
Yes,
real quick, because my light's not working
Your
for some
light's-
reason.
sure.
But does it really matter if they get in a split and they tear the sheets like Mr. Palacier just said? I mean, it's in a zone, right? And it's impacting that zone, right? So does it really matter? I mean, do I care if y'all have a squabble? I don't care. It's really based on the impact of that zone, right? All right. Okay, thank you.
So very,
I don't think my microphone's as loud as I need it to be.
so I'm going to echo both what Mr. Suggs and Ms. Young have echoed. I've talked at length with Leo and Zach, and issuance of permits, even on big, the gypsum plant, GP, all of them do it to issue of permits. And we're talking very large subs of money that comes into the county for the issue of the permit, very large. So I know the impact fee will be a little larger, but it always happens at the issues of permit, not taking in when we give the permit out. So
I'm not against it.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm just saying that's the normal procedure now, but and it's very large even now, because the first time I saw it, I was like, that's
Totally different when you're dealing with a corporation like the gypsum plant versus ABC Corporation, three guys that
Yes, sir.
want to open
Yes,
a whatever shop. You know.
understood. I just know that's what we have talked at length with Leo and Zach and all of us. That's what we're all on the same page with. But how you guys decide, it's up to you guys.
Okay, Commissioner Newbold.
So, Mr. Commando, and you're familiar with a number of different counties, so we wouldn't be at a disadvantage by going at permit. Other folks out there, from what I understood you to say, they're not doing it at occupancy.
I've just never seen it done that way.
Okay, but you have a lot of experience in a lot of other places, so, okay, thank you.
And I believe that the point that the consultant made is it needs to be consistent with both residential. What we do for one, we need to do the same on both timing. Commissioner Harvey, whatever your name is, you're recognized.
You got the old guy too.
I know, he's threw me off my, yeah.
So, you know, I really am looking at this, and I don't think we're going to have all the problems that we're trying to anticipate. I think we're going to have unintended consequences. No doubt that's going to come. But I also see that we're going to clean up blight, and we're going to see infill going on. We're going to see repurposing of buildings that we don't, maybe a ABC company doesn't want to build on a new piece of property. Maybe they go down on, 29th Avenue and take over a building that's been sitting there for a while based on that. So I think this is going to be good for our county. Do we know everything that we're fixing to deal with? Probably not, but we'll learn as we go. And if we can correct it, and we're committed to correcting it, then I agree with that. I do want to say one thing, though, to the chamber, Laura, if you will. And when you develop that plan of what incentives might look like, I think Commissioner Wilkinson really hit the nail on the head. What does it look like in other counties? What does it look like when St. John's? So, for example, if somebody's coming from Alachua County and they have impact fees there, should that be reduced on the incentives coming to Putnam County? Because they're going to pay an impact fee anyway, somewhere. So I think that needs to be taken into context when we talk about the incentives, if we ever even do incentives. I can't, I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for the board. So, and like I said, I can't speak for the Development Authority. And I can't speak for the chamber, with the economic development. So, but I do think that formula needs to be figured out. And I do think that, yes, I was going to go there, but the impact fee was $15,000. I'll come here. The impact fee is $12,000. So, maybe our incentive program is based on $3,000. Just using simple numbers. That's all I'm trying to do. So, thank you. Yeah, go ahead. I mean, you can.
Well, it seemed like
There's
you were asking
there's
a
not a
question.
question. I
I'm
think he
not.
was just making comments.
Yeah, I just think when you put pen to paper, it needs to consider the surrounding counties with impact fees.
So you have to look at the the composition of every county differently, because every county has different assets for generating revenue. So you can compare yourself to St. Johns County, but you're not at all St. Johns County, right? You can compare yourself to Clay, Alachua, all these different counties, but every county has a completely different revenue generating capability. And you have to look at the assets of your community. You have to look at your strategic plan, and you want to align your incentive policy to do what you want to do for your community in terms of revenue generation. So while it's bright to look at what other communities are doing and structure, kind of look at those different toolkits, you don't want to box yourself in to those other communities. You want to be very strategic in developing an incentive plan that does for you what you intend to create for your community. And so you look at those different mechanisms, but you want it tailored to your community. That's why you will create a policy. You have a policy currently. It was started in '99. It's pretty wide open. What the new policy recommendations will do for you is tailor it specifically to your revenue generating goals for the county, so that you're bringing in product that matches with your industry clusters and does what you want to do in terms of the community, right? And then the other thing is every deal is going to be completely different. Like, I wish that they were all exactly the same in a nice little box. It's just not how it is. Some of your deals are going to be FDI, which is foreign direct investment. We're seeing a huge amount of onshoring. This community is prime for that because it's a blue collar community with a barge port, rail, a heavy manufacturing sector. You're going to see a lot of onshoring. You're going to see FDI come out of Canada, up from Mexico, that kind of thing. They're going to have a totally different capital outlay and ability to pay than even an American company. So you're going to want your policy to allow you to kind of wiggle in there. And they might not need the impact fee abated, but they might need some help on the longer term on some of their tangible personal property because they have heavy equipment needs. Every project is going to be structured differently. You just want to have the tools in place that you can properly evaluate every project to do what you want to do in terms of revenue generation for the community. So it's not, I wish, but every project's going to be different. It's going to be a different industry, different site, so you want to have all those tools to do what you want to do when the time comes.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I think that we went down a rabbit hole again, and this needs to bring it back. This is in front of us today, an impact fee ordinance, not a incentive package ordinance. So is that what you were going to say, Commissioner Alexander?
No, ma'am, I was just going to make a statement that we are, I've learned a lot in my short tenure here, and when I first came on board, I thought that it was truly a detriment that we didn't have a dedicated attorney, and we shared him with multiple counties, municipalities, etc. But as you know, I guess there's a silver lining to everything, and the knowledge that Rich can provide to us when creating this incentive program down the road is going to be invaluable, because he can take the good and the bad of each one of these and create something that's truly going to benefit our community. And I really hope that he's able to do that for us, and that's all I got to say.
Okay, so we're back to the board. So my comments would be that I support impact fees. The way the ordinance is written with the non-tiered system, flat rate, I'm fine with that. I would like us to immediately implement the wastewater and water, and then I would also like an exemption for affordable housing in the future. So, Mr. Commander, what would that look like?
Someone just needs to put that in the form of a motion.
Okay, well, I can't do that, but those are my comments. As we talked about, and as Mr. Woodward reminded us, the impact fees are not another tax. I remember your comments on that. And they're, in fact, a way to keep taxes from going up for our current residents. And I think that's very telling, and the fact that we have some exemptions in this. And basically, we're ensuring that the development, which creates the impact and requires the additional infrastructure, pays for itself, rather than making our current taxpayers pay for it and subsidize it up front. And this is a technically calculated cost of growth, the full cost that we have. And so, Commissioner Alexander, I think you mentioned that you have three options. The growth pays for itself, the existing population subsidizes growth, or we have a level of service that is degraded. So that's where we're at. So if this board wants, it's up to the board, and we can move forward. Commissioner Harvey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rich, when we make this motion, based on what our chair has kind of mentioned, the wastewater and stuff, you already said that goes immediately because it falls part of statute. The only thing we really need to amend is having a workforce housing or affordable housing element in there.
You don't have to amend. That's something we can bring back to you as a separate issue.
Okay.
I think the issue you have to do is you have to pick the tiered versus non-tiered.
Yeah, but sometimes bringing things back, I'd like to make it, well, I'm going to make a motion, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Okay? So I make a motion that we pass the impact fee ordinance number 2025-015, and read by title only, as presented in our packet, with an affordable housing element coming in the future.
All right, we have a motion on the floor.
We need to read the title.
Okay, you need to read all of the language?
All that language?
Just that, well, it's better than the 50 pages of it.
Okay.
It's like the proclamation I read for Bristol.
I'll read it for you if you want.
No, I'm good. I can do it, okay? All right, so an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Putnam County, Florida, repealing ordinance 2006-37, 2006-38, 2006-39, 2006-40, and 2006-41. Amending Chapter 24 of the Putnam County Code, adopting an impact fee study which establishes public facilities districts and provide for impact fees for fire protection, law enforcement, county government, facilities, parks and recreation, transportation, water and wastewater facilities, including provisions for findings, purposes, intent of impact fees, definitions, the imposition of fees, applicable and exemptions, calculation of fees through a fee schedule, developer contributions, credits, use of funds, refund of fees, periodic review of fees, payment of fees, penalties, interest, and liens relating to unpaid fees, credits providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have a motion on the floor.
You have a second.
And we have a second. Is there any other further discussion? All right, calling for the vote. We'll do a roll call vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. I know that was a long discussion and with multiple meetings. I think that we truly are doing what's best for our community as we move forward and try to navigate going forward. And this, to me, is part of what we have to do for smart growth planning. We cannot allow developers to come in and people to come in and those costs be on the backs of our current citizens. Moving forward, we're going into the budget public hearing.
Thank you, Chair. This is an annual process where we do a budget and mid-year true-up. This is where we take our current budget year and we align it with the carry-forward revenues and expenditures of last year to make any necessary adjustments. Mm-hmm. You have in your packet a detailed transaction list outlining all of the adjustments to each and every fund. It has been properly advertised in accordance with the provisions of Florida Statute 200.065. And at that, I will turn it back over to the board for any questions, deliberations, and or to open the public hearing for public comment.
All right, make sure you're on page 264, 65 through 67. That is the incorrect agenda item. All right, are there any questions for staff?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
You know, I just want to thank our staff for meeting with us, going through this. I took advantage of going back there and going through each line item, so I'm perfectly fine with this true up the way it is. So if there's no other comments, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the attached budget resolution to amend fiscal year 25 budget.
All right, we have a motion on the floor.
Second.
Second. Before we move forward, is there any public comment? This is a public hearing. Is there any public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll move it back to the board. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Sorry, was there any further discussion? I think I asked that already. Was there any further discussion?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Call it again. Motion carries. All right, with that, we are through with our evening
Chair?
meeting. Passed by resolution number, did we state the resolution number?
Yeah, resolution number 2025-037.
Yes, all right.
There's another item, B.
That's what it is, right?
Okay, yeah, okay.
A and B. Could you clarify that?
Yes, ma'am. Your resolution is the correct number. Commissioner Harvey just read off the resolution number. Item B was sent out as supplemental information to correct a scrivener's error in the actual transaction list, accounting that goes to finance. It's the same numbers. The resolution stays the same. It simply was a scrivener's error that was corrected.
All
So
right,
do we need to pass that?
No, sir, there's no resolution attached to it. You did exactly what you needed.
Okay.
all right. All right,
Chair, before we end the meeting, I have a
sure.
I want to make an appointment, effective immediately. District 4 on the Fair Board, Amber Coover has not been active in that, and replace her with Rhonda Williams.
All right. All right, with that, do we have any other commissioner comments or items to come before the board?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
did we just want to review the letter? I know there was the letter that you wanted to send out.
Oh, yes, so we penned a letter earlier regarding our motion that was made from Commissioner Alexander earlier today, and that letter was put in your box. Has everybody had a chance to review the letter? It was pretty good letter. All right.
Do we need to pass it, or no, we're good?
Just because the letter says it's based on the direction of the Board of County Commissioners, I just want to make sure that you all gave at least consensus to move that.
And I
Okay.
appreciate that very much. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Administrator Suggs. All right, with that, this meeting is adjourned.